In case you haven't noticed, the Army of Spies is global and we never sleep. Another one of you has put together some clarity on something that amazingly involves both Wyoming and Singapore. We also have more confirmation that Cardano has already executed a masterstroke that could be devastating to certain of its competitors. Ready? Let's go. Both the items we're going to discuss in this video could end up being huge. I think one of them may get resolved this weekend at the summit. The other item is more like a long tail risk for a bunch of other blockchains, and it'll take a couple years to play out. But I think during that period, Cardano is going to be able to ride along smoothly with the confidence that it hasn't committed the same mistake that a lot of its main competitors have. And we're going to talk about that second item first. A lot of people in crypto have made a lot of noise in the last 24 hours about this interview that happened yesterday. This is the Washington Post and Gary Gensler, head of the SEC. But I think everybody focused on the wrong part of this video. Everybody got really hung up on the part of the video where Gensler said, I don't think crypto can exist for very long outside of the regulatory framework. And everybody, of course, just focused on the part where he said, I don't think crypto can last very long, right? There was context to that. He said outside of the regulatory framework. This guy taught classes at MIT about crypto. He's obviously interested in crypto. He even pointed that out. He said, the reason I taught the classes was because I'm interested in crypto and I think it presents cool, novel things. Okay, maybe he didn't say the word cool. I don't know if Gary Gensler has ever used the word cool in his life, but maybe. The important part of this video that everybody seemed to neglect was this part that happens at 17:20. At 17:20, the Washington Post interviewer poses a question to Gensler. The question here was whether or not the SEC currently has enough authority to deal with crypto or whether he needs more legislation. His answer was that he thinks they already have robust authority that they are going to use. He even said at one point, we'll be like the cop on the beat if we have to. But it would be better if platforms, and he did use that terminology, platforms. I think this is important. He said, if platforms would come in and register, I don't know if he actually used the word register, but he meant come in and do whatever they need to do to comply. If platforms would come in, if they are trading securities, and we know that Gensler already thinks that most of the exchanges, probably all of the exchanges are trading securities. That's not new news. He said, if they have lending products, we've also covered that on this channel. We've talked a lot about Gensler going after, he's obviously going to go after the lending platforms. He's obviously going to go after the DEXs and exchanges. He's obviously going to go after synthetics. He said this as strongly, loudly, and widely as possible. Here's the new thing that I think people didn't really pay enough attention to. He also said, if they have staking, this is a big deal for Gen 3. He mentioned staking, but then he doesn't just like off the cuff mention staking and move on. He then says he wants to describe staking. He says, I'm glad to describe staking for your listeners. It's where you put a coin at the platform and you earn a return. He said, it's where you put a coin at the platform and you earn a return. This has to do with custody. We've talked about this before. In the custody is everything video, we talked about how ETH and Solana and a lot of these other blockchains seem to be using a Casper-based staking system. Here's the problem. When I look at their plans for staking, these blockchains that are going down that Casper path, they all seem to need the stake pools to have custody so they can use slashing to enforce against malicious conduct. This may turn out to be Cardano's masterstroke. In Ouroboros, the stake pools don't have custody. Gensler said it. They put the tokens at the platform. He didn't define platform. He just used this phrase platform. And with that, you can imagine he's thinking about, maybe he's just thinking about Coinbase. We don't know. But what if he's thinking about stake pools? If he's thinking about stake pools in these systems, that require slashing, they all seem to work by virtue of the stake pools having custody. How else are they going to engage in slashing if the stake pools don't have custody? We, of course, have already seen all the stake pool delegator losses in Ethereum. Ethereum hasn't even been doing it very long, and we've already seen those losses. There's no guarantee that the SEC, when they go after these platforms that Gensler is talking about here, there's no guarantee they're going to stop with the Coinbases of the world and anybody else who's allowing you to stake your tokens with them when you have tokens in a Gen 3 platform that has proof of stake. Stake pools might fall within their targeting. This could try to be a gigantic problem for Casper-based Gen 3 protocols. With that one remark, the chair of the SEC just created a potential regulatory overhang on these projects. Everybody knows about it now. And these projects will have to contend with that as they march toward proof of stake. But what else are they going to do? Would they just drop Casper, drop slashing, use Ouroboros? I don't think that's on any of their radars right now. We don't know what's going to happen. This is an unpredictable SEC, but it may turn out that that one decision by Cardano, that one masterstroke, may keep them out of regulatory trouble, while every stake pool in every single one of these custodial proof of stake systems, by custodial I mean the stake pool having custody, and every stake pool in one of those systems may have to be worried every moment going forward from here on that the SEC is going to decide those stake pools are the type of platform that they're going to go after. Warning, potential spoiler alert. If you think the ideas we're about to discuss could possibly be correct, and you would be saddened if it spoiled your surprise at the Cardano Summit this weekend, then you should probably log off now. Who knows whether this is correct or not, but if you would not want that surprise spoiled and you think there's a chance we might be correct, you probably shouldn't listen to the rest of this. The Army of Spies never sleeps. We are constantly erasing information asymmetry. And when I say we, I don't mean me, I mean all of you. It's been less than 24 hours since the video where we discussed a bunch of possible things that were going on having to do with Singapore and the University of Wyoming separately. Those were two separate topics. But at Lewis R 100,000, that's at Lewis R 100,000, 100,000 being the Arabic numeral, put together something that involves both the University of Wyoming and Singapore. This is amazing. So what we're looking at here is a page at the University of Wyoming that describes a certain project. Team members, Philip Schlump, Dr. Mike Baraksak. This project is about secure hardware. So you can see they're talking about counterfeit goods. How do you prove authenticity with some sort of device? How do you protect the privacy of consumers so that devices do not expose the consumer? How do you prevent fake authentication devices? How do you allow the transfer of real goods in aftermarkets? How do you resell and transfer the ownership to the real owner? The project in the Wobble Wyoming Advanced Blockchain Lab is to use strong encryption and a blockchain to implement this. So this seems to be about the provenance of and authenticity of goods, right? You can imagine, whatever, Louis Vuitton bag or something like that. So then you come down here to short-term goals. Build a full protocol demo that uses a near-field communication emulator and NFC, like in an Android phone, and a second device running an application, a second Android phone as a pair, and demonstrate the security protocol. Do proofs on the protocol that it works. Do proofs that the protocol will not show the identity of the owner of products, but can still verify that the person is the owner when a product changes ownership. This is interesting. We hear a lot about this from Cardano, right? A lot of zero knowledge proof stuff. Here we have proof that the owner owns the thing without revealing the identity of the owner. Protocol will not show the identity of the owner, but can still verify that the person is the owner. So this is pretty interesting. They go on here to describe a little bit more about what they're doing. So this on its own, you could say like, okay, this is obviously something that Cardano would be interested in. You've got some zero knowledge proof kind of stuff going on. And we've also got the secure hardware stuff going on. And in fact, we've seen Charles talk about exactly this thing, this type of thing before. Here's a Charles video clip that well-known Cardano community member Ida King put up on December 4th, 2020. Check this out. This only has 11 views. Good job digging this up, Lewis. This is amazing. You guys should go watch this and boost up the view count on this. In this video, Charles talks about trusted hardware and offline transactions. It's a lot of people don't realize it's always been easy to do offline transactions. Even in Bitcoin, you've always been able to do offline transactions. You can just sign a transaction, put that on a thumb drive, and hand that to somebody. The problem is that person doesn't know if you're going to double spend that same Bitcoin that you're supposedly giving to them on that thumb drive, right? You can sign the transaction, but for the person receiving that thumb drive, there's no guarantee that you don't immediately, like, you hand it to them and then you walk into the room and then you go spend the Bitcoin somewhere else, right? And so you can do offline transactions, but you kind of have to trust the sender that they're not going to double spend before you're able to broadcast that transaction to all the nodes. So what Charles is talking about here is trusted hardware that would give the receiver of the transactions two proofs. One proof is that the private key, so you would have a private key that would exist within a conclave. And when you do the offline transaction with trusted hardware, both parties having their own trusted hardware, like for instance, in their phones or their laptops, Charles says, the trusted hardware would provide two proofs to the receiver that the private key was erased from the sender's hardware. So the sender would no longer have a copy of that private key once they walk out of the room, once the transaction's been handed over, and that was the only copy of the key. So you also know that the sender didn't have a separate copy of the key on their laptop, for instance, and then they make the transaction with you on their phone and they walk out of the room and it's erased from their phone, but they also had a private copy of the key on their laptop. It just exists within this little conclave, as Charles puts it. So with that, you could actually do offline transactions. And the receiver can trust that there's no double spend going on, that Bitcoin actually exists, and that the sender can't double spend it before they're able to broadcast the transaction to the nodes and make the transaction actually happen on chain, actually be recorded on the on-chain ledger. What's really awesome about this, if you think about it, if you have an off-chain transaction, it's infinitely scalable. It's not happening on chain. It's like the ultimate non-layer 2 because it's not recorded anywhere, but the sender can't pull it back. So you can do those transactions all day. It creates zero congestion on the actual base layer, and you can do as many as you want. True, eventually you've got to record it. You've got to record it on chain, but while you're doing those transactions, they can happen as fast as the hardware can execute them. What's interesting is that this also ties in to the Singapore topic we covered yesterday. This is a TechWire Asia article, and just from the title, you would say that this doesn't look very auspicious, given that we already covered this yesterday. Monetary Authority of Singapore shortlist 15 banks and fintechs for CBDC challenge. We already know that. What this article lays out that we didn't know yesterday is this. The finalists are as follows, and then they show the same finalists, same countries of origin of these finalists that we basically already knew just by looking at the names of the finalists. But it also lays out that they're each providing a different solution. They're each providing a different CBDC project. It's not a contest to see who gets to build out everything having to do with the Singapore CBDC. It's a bunch of different projects that relate to CBDCs. And guess what? It tells us what the IOG project is. IOG Singapore. Unchained, we hadn't heard that before. Unchained is a mobile-based digital wallet that aims to mimic the functionality of physical wallets. It allows users to store digital identities and digital cash. Furthermore, it allows users to make private offline peer-to-peer transfers. Wow, that sounds a lot like what Charles was just talking about, private offline peer-to-peer transfers. I wonder how you do that. Maybe you utilize this research on secure hardware that's been going on at the Wyoming Advanced Blockchain Lab at the University of Wyoming. And you could even throw in some of this zero knowledge proof stuff so that you can do these transactions without having to give up the identity of the sender. What if the University of Wyoming has even been building special chips? This all ties together now. This is the part we didn't have before. So the same thing still applies. Like it looks like based on this article, it looks like we now know. And I think the actual blog entry on the Monetary Authority of Singapore's website, it kind of mentioned this, but it was very ambiguous. You couldn't really understand what was going on. So this article says, however, all 15 finalists will see their applications for grant funding of up to 200,000 fast-tracked, with the funding support coming from the Monetary Authority of Singapore. The top three will win 50,000 each at the FinTech Festival that happens in November. So it looks like there's a little bit of money just for being among these 15 finalists. And perhaps we can say, I thought it was a winner take all kind of thing. They go before the judges at the FinTech Festival. It looks like that's not the case. It looks like these are all separate projects, and maybe the Monetary Authority of Singapore is just interested in all these. So we could get an announcement at the summit that this is happening, that a bunch of people, projects being started where a bunch of people in Singapore are running around with these using these hardware modules, these NFC modules in their phones, doing these offline peer-to-peer transfers with good reliance that the sender cannot double spend. Guys, think about the implications of this. This isn't just for Singapore. It's offline. Two people with phones could do this anywhere without access to the blockchain. You could do this in sub-Saharan Africa. You could do this in any developing nation state in the world, and you don't need to worry about first making sure the participants have access to the blockchain. This is way better than OpenDime. This could be gigantic. This could be another masterstroke for Cardano. I'm excited. I hope you are too. I'll talk to you tomorrow.